All right, so I got another video from Rashad Abdul-Rahman, Rahman, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, where he describes what is holding Black Americans back. Excuse me, what is holding Black Americans back from success? I wanted to share this video because the last one he did, where he was talking about really what affects Black wealth and how marriages, the lack of marriages in the Black community affect Black wealth. I really enjoyed his viewpoint on that discussion, and so I wanted to share this in hopes that that you all can be inspired, be informed, and be educated on what's going on. I only watched a portion of it, so we'll get into it right now. All right. And we'll watch it together. But y'all let me know what y'all think. All right, it's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.
So this next question is a follow-up to the previous segment. Why do you think African Americans lag behind other racial groups in terms of progress in this country?
Yeah, I think it's probably three main reasons. And I think following from the last video, the first one I would say is mindset. Mindset. You know, psychology is the study of human thought and behavior, roughly speaking, how we think and how we behave. And behavior tends to just be an expression of the mind, the expression of thought. If I can control a person's mind, I can control a person's behavior. But the mind is a complex thing. There are many components that go to or that comprise what we call or what we're speaking about when we say the mind. So aspirations, emotions, intelligent, perspective even, perspective. So I think a lot of times what harms us is our perspective on things. We grow up in a culture. Our parents tell us this, not my parents per se, but I've heard this said by parents. I've heard this said by grandparents. It's definitely said by Black media in Black culture. It impresses upon us a spirit of defeat before we even get started. It impresses, it doesn't, our culture and just the habit of Black life, we're not empowered with messages that lets us believe that the same things other people achieve, we can achieve. What's impressed upon us is a sense of inferiority, whether we know it that way or not. And I think that unfortunately, to many of us, we live in a perpetual state of inferiority. We just do. This is controversial. Not all of us, mind you, not all of us, okay? So to be clear.
I think if I'm understanding his uh, his side correctly, I think I would agree that we're raised to believe, not even believe, we are raised to understand that we are treated differently, and especially in this country, but across the world. Um, and that's right. I mean, we have to understand we have to understand why certain things are happening to us. But on the flip side, to kind of what he was saying, like it also builds up this sense of inferiority. So I've never been told in my family, and I don't plan on telling my kids, these types of things. But it it, it is not uncommon for, especially those of us who raised in the '90s, for our parents or siblings or aunts and uncles to tell us that we can't do something because that's only for white people, right? Only white people do that. Only white kids do that. Only white people are interested in that, right? um, or that's going to be more difficult for you because you are black, right? Which would translate into our mind that it's something that maybe we should reconsider, right? Um, so I don't know. I think it's a bit of a catch-22 in a sense of where it's like maybe he'll explain it, maybe not. How do you manage making your kids aware mostly for safety reasons and also just for basic understanding as to why they're being treated a certain way, uh, uh, how to make them aware of um, who they are to other people, right? Because no matter what, we're gonna tell our kids, you know, rightfully so, that they are kings and queens and they are strong and resilient, and all of these other things that describe a strong individual, right? But how do we tell them where they fit in this country, while also not giving them that sense of inferiority? I think that's a very difficult. That'd be a really good conversation to have, and I think that's a very difficult task, because on one sense you can't just be like, oh yeah, you could do any and everything, and then they get a little older and they get confused as to why there's so many blockades up, and what's stopping them. They just don't understand why, right? And then they develop all sorts of other issues because their parents aren't being real with them by saying like, look, yeah, you could do anything you put your mind to, but it's going to be a little bit harder because A, B, and C, right? But then you say that, and then you risk the fact of them, leaning on that as an excuse not to do A, B, and C, right? So very, very difficult, very difficult concept to grasp, in my opinion, when trying to raise kids.
Mind you, not all of us, okay? So to be clear and to be fair, but I think far too many of us, we think we're raised this way, we're taught this way. Even the people who talk about race to such a degree that race is the defining factor in terms of everything, that limits us. That limits us. Because if a person already believes that he has his race working against him, he may actually just be bad at this thing. He may actually just be a failure at that other thing. But if he's thinking that race is the defining feature of his existence, then he'll never be of a mindset to truly analyze himself and say, okay, where did I go wrong? Why did I fail? You see what I'm saying? So I think it's perspective. I think that we need a new language. Our parents need to be telling the children, the teachers, they don't need to be like, I've seen this on social media, a child is acting up and the teacher is telling the child, well, don't you know this world is designed to kill black boys and destroy black boys, and you acting like this, you're not gonna have a chance. That's a terrible thing. Yeah. You don't have to tell that young man that. Why don't you tell that young man, you don't have to say it in these words, but I'm saying, why don't we have a culture where if you want to inspire the young man, speak about his own qualities as a young man. Speak about his value as a young man. Speak about the immense amount of potential that he holds as a young man. And that's
but and that's exactly what I was getting into. So I guess I did understand his point properly, but it's just like 100%. I feel what he's saying. It's just, in that context, is it really safe to not let them also know, like, look, you cannot move like this because your friends are probably moving like this. Your friends of other groups, ethnic groups are moving like this, but you cannot move like this. You're going to end up getting taken out, right? Like, do we remove that from the conversation and let them be blind to it? I don't know. That's tough.
And that's besides the point of even trying to discover why he's acting out like that in the first place. So I would say, I think I want to circle back around to mindset, because why he's acting up, using this young man as a type, I think it goes to the primary, the number one issue, which is family. I worked at a school one time, and the young boy was just acting up, wasn't doing his work, cursing in class, and he was so out of order, they had to get the principal, the director. I was the assistant at the time, assistant director. They had to get the director. And when they isolated the young man and asked him what was the issue was he saw his mother performing a sex act on her boyfriend, and that just disturbed his spirit for the rest of the day. That's why he was acting up. So that young boy, though he was acting up in that moment, he was responding from something. a man living with his mother, knowing that that man is not his father, knowing that that man, not living with his mother, visiting, knowing that that man is not really taking care of him, that man is not investing in him, he's not investing in the family, he's not in the role of a pillar that a man should be, and that man was getting was receiving something from that boy's mother that that boy knew he shouldn't been receiving. And I'm keeping it very clean. So it disturbed it. Now, he didn't know that's what was working in him. He knew he was mad. Now, imagine how many of our young males, and I'm just sticking to the males right now, grow up in that mindset and in that spirit. As a matter of fact, the studies show that girls who grow up in a single parent household, they tend to do better than boys who grow up in a single parent household, because boys need a model. Boys need that male model, that male figure, that male authority. There's another study that I've been made familiar with before. I probably shared this too, where there were, I forget where this was, in Africa, the savannah, African savannah somewhere, where these elephants were just attacking people, killing rhinoceroses even. They were just on the rampage. Usually the caravans would come through, safaris, and you know, they just watch. But these were these aggressive elephants. And like I said, they were killing other animals. When they began to study the condition of those elephants, they found out that, and I may have the details wrong, but the overarching structure of the story is correct. They found out that poachers had wiped out the fathers, the elephant daddies. These were all young teenage elephants, and their daddies had been taken away. So they had no one to discipline them. They had no standard of discipline or conduct. So they were attacking everybody. So what they did is they brought in another group of elephants, grown men elephants, grown male elephants, not men, but you get what I'm saying, grown male elephants. And they established, when those elephants came among them, they established a set of, hierarchical rituals, to establish dominance. You know how animals do, like buck heads and all of that. In the final analysis, the behavior stopped. Now, this is in the elephant world. So the family structure in Black America is absolutely deplorable. 70, 72, 73% homes without a parent. Most of the time it's without a father. And just like we just said about that young male who was acting up, because if he continues in that line, or those young elephants, we know what happens to these young boys when they are raised without fathers. They're more likely to commit suicide, to face depression, to go into prison, not being able to read at whatever grade level, etc. So the family, the African-American family, has been decimated. And the decimation of the African-American family, can we actually say that there was structural support for that? Did the powers that be permit that? To a degree, yes. I think Bill Clinton even came back and apologized for the legislation that they passed that got so many Black men locked up. Currently, some of them are still in prison. They stole, or they, broke into a car. It wasn't like they were murdering people, but they had the 3 strikes you're out. So there was very harsh legislation against these young Black men, and it took a lot of them out of the communities. Okay. At the same time, however, we have to admit that by that time, the political structure, the political powers that be weren't just white. The Black Caucus was in existence. The Black church is intimately linked up with the Black Caucus, the Congressional Black Caucus. Why did we not have, during those days, we had Jet Magazine, Ebony Magazine, Essence Magazine, BET was around. Why didn't we have any serious dialogue? Why weren't there any serious warnings to the Black community? Why weren't the
I believe due to likely censorship, not saying that it's right or that there shouldn't have been some push, or maybe there was, we just wouldn't know. But if I were to guess, I would believe that stuff, just like today, wasn't pushed because the powers behind that, whether these entities were ran by African Americans or not, the powers behind that, the powers funding that, would have pulled back funding if that was being pushed in those media outlets. right? Could you imagine in the late '90s, early 2000s, BET, getting on there and talking about black ownership and pushing the black wealth narrative? Man, BET's not even black owned anymore, right? But BET would cease to exist. There's no way. there's no way. And I'm a firm believer of that. So that's my take on why.
To the black community. Why weren't the black church leaders seriously addressing? And to this day, they don't address family. Not only the consequences of that legislation, why right now and to this day, as thoroughly as the black family has been wiped out, why don't we hear from the black church leadership? Why don't we hear from the black Muslim leadership? With a few exceptions. Why don't we hear from those who are in positions to prick the conscience of our people that our family life needs to be put together? The second thing that really I'm saying second because the first was perception, but I'm saying family. So the other thing that I would say is economics. No, pardon me, education. Education leads into economics. We tend to we hear these statistics about, the average black family doesn't have XYZ wealth that the average white family has. A lot of that has to do with education. Education in marriage. Studies have shown that the more educated a person is, the better off they will be economically. Now, they came out with a study relatively recently, a few years ago, saying with all of this advanced education blacks have been getting, they're not seeing an increase in their overall net worth or what have you. That's for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is, this is an older reason that I read about or heard about years ago. When blacks make it, because of our family structure, like I'm that one six-figure earning black person, all my family is in line for $1.
Yeah.
And that tends to not be the case with other groups.
I heard that.
So I'm carrying a greater burden when I achieve. That's number one. And then number two, despite having a PhD, I knew a sister here in the South, in Georgia. She had a PhD in some public health. She couldn't find a job. A lot of the degrees, a lot of the education that we get, the market doesn't demand. Right now, we're in the age of tech. We're in the age of AI. We're in a time of great innovation, a lot of business, a huge amount of business, even like Black Friday that just passed. A lot of business has transferred online. The market is not demanding psychologists, a BA in psychology or a BA in art or whatever, or a BA in education. A lot of the teachers who go into education want to quit because all of these kids, not all of them, but too many of them are hellions. So even when we get degrees, we're not getting degrees that the market demands. So, but going further with this, the studies also show that not only advanced education that the market demands, but when you have families, so not only me as a male, not only do I have a master's degree in nursing, or I have a doctorate, or I'm like a medical doctor, but if I have that and my wife has a PhD in engineering, I'm just making this up. I'm trying to think of something that's in demand. In other words, when I'm married and I have education and she has education, that increases our likelihood of success. But we're not moving like that in large number. I can't tell you how many, I used to say it when I was young, and I can't tell you how many of us used to say education's not for me. Education's not for me. I hear so many blacks, young boys, education's not for me. Now, either we are the most rare group in the world, well, for some odd reason, we don't need education for success in life, or we've been deceived. That brings me back to the first thing that I said. It's perception. And I think the problem with our perception, with our perspective, is coming from our culture, number one. I'm not saying number one in terms of rank. I'm just saying number one is the first point. The second thing that's coming, that's messing us up, goes back to family. Our perception is messed up because our families are broken. See, family, the father there, the mother there, the grandfather, the uncle, particularly if these are people of quality, not like the pimp uncle. I'm talking about the good uncle. They set a standard. They set a standard by which you say, okay, that's what I want to be like. But we lack models in our community. We lack standards of what to ascend into, what to become in our community. So a lot of black men are just simply uninspired. Now, if you factor in black culture today, like there's this song I was listening to by this girl. It's called Brokies. I think the song's called Brokies, and it's like Brokies. You know, I sampled the music, you know, to see what's happening. And I'm saying to myself, she's teasing. Now, this reminds me when we were in school, I don't want no scrubs. Can you pay my bills?
Scrubs,
There's this
I remember
thing
that.
in our culture that tells our men, if you don't have any money, you're worthless. You don't have anything. Now, for a young man growing into his development, coming into his manhood, that messes his head up. Because he sees men who make, like no 20-year-old is rich unless they have some type of genius about them and they're able to, you know, do something very innovative. So here's a 19-year-old, 20-year-old coming up in a culture where women in his culture are telling him if he doesn't have money, he's nothing. And the only thing that he can really see in his surrounding that shows that he can get money, the only model of making money at his age is something that's more than likely illegal. So we have a culture, I'm just using this as an example, that reinforces dysfunction. It reinforces self-hate, and it perpetuates our regress. We're regressed people. Again, I go back to Islam, al-Islam. See, from an Islamic perspective, black culture is polytheism. It's pure polytheism. These people worship their genitals. These people worship their private parts. They worship their butts. They worship this. They worship drugs. They worship killing. And all of these, sex outside of marriage, intoxicants, gambling, etc., these are all the handiworks of Shaitan in our view. So we have to be aware of how we have been affected. And I believe from the Islamic perspective, we have to understand that we have the medicine. But you can't give the medicine properly if you don't know what the problem is.
Joining us now is Congresswoman.
Ooh, that was I got to figure out how to stop these automatic things because I don't like to get into random topics. But that was that was good. That was a word. Can't say that I disagree with much on what he says. I don't disagree with what he says on college. I too was a person that said, well, I don't know that I ever said college wasn't for me. Well, he said education. I've never said education wasn't for everybody. Education and college are two completely different things. I don't believe I ever said college wasn't for me. I know I felt it, but I stayed in college since I got out of high school. It just took me years to complete, but I always took a class here and there at least, because I knew at some point I would get to the place where I can just accelerate in college, which I did. But I will say, and I'm just gonna take him saying education as I believe he might have been using college as the word education and college being the same synonym for him in this context. So I'm gonna respond as if he said college isn't for everyone or isn't for certain individuals, and I will say that I believe that the current structure of college is not for everyone. It just isn't. It's not even designed to be for everyone. And so it makes it very difficult. I mean, well, I'll be super dramatic here, right? And just say like you have people with certain learning disabilities, right? And yes, you have some with learning disabilities that still are able to get college degrees, but you can I don't think anybody can argue with me that the current and standard system of college education uh, is in any way, shape, or form catered to someone with a learning disability, with a severe learning disability, right? Which means if you have a relatively severe, strong learning disability, you're already out of the running for getting a college degree. Not saying you can't. It's just systemically, you're already out of the running. And and unfortunately, there are a lot, whether it be mild or light or mild learning disability that runs rampant in the Black community, just simply because of how a lot of the uh, youth in the Black community come up, right? Inner city youth having all sorts of issues, like he described here, with the young man seeing his mom doing things that he probably shouldn't have seen, or definitely should not have seen, right? Like all that stuff just cooking up in your brain, and it affects your ability to learn early on, which then affects your ability to learn later on in life. And this is no way, shape, or form I'm not trying to create some sort of crutch for people. I'm just explaining why I don't believe that uh, that college is for everyone in the broad sense, right? And like I said, I'm breaking that down to say uh, the current structure of college is not for everyone. And I know this because it was not for me. I got through it, right? But I guarantee you, I don't have too many teachers that I had in high school or even middle school that would believe that I uh, excelled at a collegiate level at the way that I did. If I guarantee if we were to go back in time and ask any of my teachers, I can think of maybe one that may have had some faith in me. Outside of that, I doubt it, right? Because I look back at myself, I wouldn't have had any faith in myself the way I was moving in high school and in middle school. I was definitely in high school. Um, and it all just comes back to just how we're raised, and kind of how our brains work, and my brain just did not fit the standard does not fit the standard role. And there are a lot of people out there, regardless of race, a lot of people out there. You hear stories about it all the time. A lot of people out there, especially in the entrepreneurship world, who just, when it came to education, they it just wasn't for them. But to his point, education in general is definitely for everyone. College can be for everyone, as long, I mean, you just have to be intentional about it. You have to uh, you have to have a big fat why. I've described this before, having a why to get through college. Like, what is your real reason for get to college, for getting through college? Being intentional, right? Like he said, why would you go get a degree in something that's not in demand? Probably because you're not really going to college for any reason other than you read some billboard that said college equals wealth, and that is far from the truth. And the last thing I wanted to point out while I'm on that topic, he mentioned a couple of things that make it hard for African Americans who do get their college um, degree and see success after. Yes, one is definitely the choice, um, their choice of the degree that they get. I can't remember what the second thing that he said was, but he definitely did not mention a third reason I would add is that is the fact of student loans. We and yeah, I think he touched on it a little bit in some other earlier statistics, but we uh well he okay he touched on the need for the likelihood that we will need to support family members once we get to a certain level of wealth, which is not the case in other ethnic groups. And I had a friend that broke that down to me some years ago. That it's a very interesting concept, and it's a real concept. Um, but part of what holds us back is that we are more likely to take on student loans, which is another reason why many of you may not know why the pushback for not canceling student loans was so big. Is twofold. The pushback for not canceling student loans was so big because they knew it was going to, uh, I'll say disproportionately, in a positive way, affect uh, African Americans because we hold the most student loans, right? And then on the other side, the administration was pushing that, right? Because they wanted to get the African American vote. Why? Because the people who have student loans more often than not are going to be, are the ones who are going to be, you know, the ones who are going to have the most forgiven are going to be African Americans, minorities. But specifically, we're talking African Americans. So if you want to get the black vote, what is something that you're going to say that you're going to do, even if you don't believe you can do it? Student loan forgiveness, right? But all that to say, the student loans in general are a big reason as to why when we do get those jobs, right? I mean, think about what a PhD would cost. PhD, I mean, you're gonna get out, like you said, a PhD in psychology, you're gonna get out and have easily $200,000 to $300,000 in student loan debt. What job are you gonna get that's gonna be able to pay that off? When I went to my black graduation some years ago, there was a very small portion of because when they called people up, I think they called them up by group. I think they called everybody up by group. And you had your business of administration, which is what I was in. You had your engineering, and you had some other ones. I actually, I wish I could find it, but I do have it somewhere. I kept the booklet that showed the title of everybody's degree and all the people underneath it, and business of administration, which is a fairly decent career choice, education choice. And I'm not saying that because I got it. I'm saying that because I actually did the research before I went to go get it. Obviously, engineering, medical school, certain sciences, all really good degree fields. But when you looked at this at the graduation paper with all the names on it and the degree fields, these more, I'll say, highly paid and more opportunity fields were very light compared to your sports therapy, your psychologies, your just all of the fields that one does not pay a lot. Communications degree is another one, does not pay a whole lot and is not in a high demand, one or both of those. Right. So I found that to be interesting being at the black grad. It's like, when I went to the regular graduation, it seemed to be, it was still similar proportion, but it was like way more in these areas that when you talk about a ratio, it was way more in these areas that actually someone could make a living off of outside of college. But when it came to the black graduation, I really noticed. I was like, damn, like people really came out over here. They spent 20, 30, $40,000 in school, And I don't see many of them getting a job that's going to, I mean, maybe a job that may pay what they took out, 40,000, 50,000, right? How hard, it's going to be really hard for you to pay that off in a reasonable amount of time. And I guarantee you many of them, probably most of them, unless they paid cash, are probably still in debt today, right? So definitely, you know, career choice, and I would say the two things that we can fix immediately is career choice and the cost of what we spend on these colleges. The third one that he mentioned, which was the you know, the need to assist family members, that is hard. I actually don't have a real solution for that, because you can't just allow family members to, you know, fall flat in many cases, right? Like, I'm not just going to be loaning family members you know, money, or giving family members money just because they're family members and they don't want to get up off the couch and work, right? But if it's some sort of, you know, health issue, which is what a lot of them which is what a lot of African American families have to deal with when taking care of, you know, a parent that's, you know, only in their 50s, you know, and, you know, they suffer from some sort of condition and have to move in and be taken care of. That happens a lot, and that's a harder thing for us, I believe, to change immediately. But the other two we can change immediately. All right, pick a good career and don't spend too much on that when it comes to college. If you can't do that, then college is not for you. All right. But this is a good video. I didn't mean for it to go this long, but this is stuff that we're passionate about, stuff that I'm passionate about. I love to talk about Black success and what we can do. And I will, again, link Rashad's information down on the in the description below. Y'all make sure y'all tap in over there. Really, I really like the way he breaks things down, much better than I can. So when I see these individuals that are able to break down a lot of this information in a nice educational way, I got to stick to it. I got to stick to their channel. I got to share that information and add some of my commentary to it. All right. But y'all let me know what y'all think. All right, it's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.